Lunaverse, Episode 2, by Rainbow Doubledash. Episode 2, Family Matters. Chapter 1, The Secret. The life of a filly is essentially time spent with every pony older than you telling you to never, under any circumstances, do something. Then, 5 minutes later, telling you, in a slightly different wording, to do that very thing. It was a time, basically, of contradiction. Case in point, don't keep secrets. But every pony loves surprises. In order to surprise a pony, you do need to keep a secret from them. It didn't bother Dinky Doo, exactly, but it was something she had an awful lot of time to think about over the past year or so, ever since she determined to keep a certain secret from every pony, but especially her mother, since that secret was a surprise, and that made it a good secret. Frankly, Dinky had been amazed she'd been able to keep the secret/surprise for so long, but also, in a way, proud of herself. Dinky, however, forced her mind to stop going over that particular line of thought, as she neared her objective. She was finding it harder and harder, and instead focused on the chicken in front of her. The chicken was, in turn, focused hard on her. Being a filly, the juxtaposition of the two did not seem strange to Dinky. "Okay, Elizabeth," Dinky said as she stepped closer to the chicken. The chicken took a step back. "Come here, girl. Come here. Come here, come here, come here, come here." Dinky had taken a very few quick steps forward, trying to catch the chicken in her hose. But the white, feathery rogue had proven to be too nimble for the filly. It scampered off, while Dinky, having expected to end up with a chicken in her hooves, instead finding a distinct lack of such, it stumbled and fell into the dirt. On the other hoof, her movement had at least made Elizabeth run away from the fence's gate and sort of in the direction of the chicken coop that she had escaped from. "Optimism!" Dinky Mother said it was important to always look on the bright side of things. "Come back here!" Dinky exclaimed, albeit quickly, as he gave chase to the renegade poultry. Optimism could only take a pony so far, after all. She needed to catch Elizabeth and get her back into the coop before Miss Fluttershy came back over, or else Miss Fluttershy might get angry in her, and then Dinky wouldn't get her 3 bits. Had she not been currently chasing a fowl, Dinky might have felt bad about being more concerned about her bits than Elizabeth being back in her safety of her coop. But with her so close to her objective, Dinky had been happy when she had learned that word. It somehow sounded more important than goal, and easier to say than aspiration. The filly leapt again, but Elizabeth proved to be nimble at avian, once more avoiding Dinky's hooves. The filly considered trying her telekinesis for a moment. Miss Trixie had given her a few pointers on how to improve it, and it had improved by leaps and bounds over the past 2 months since he had first met the representative of the Luna's Night Court. But Dinky still wasn't sure she wanted to attempt it on a living thing. She had a tendency to grip things too hard and, well, break them. It was happening less and less these days, but still, Dinky knew enough not to seriously consider telekinesis on a living creature. Unfortunately, Elizabeth was just too agile for the filly to catch, too crafty, staring at her with those beady little chicken eyes like she was mocking Dinky for being unable to catch her. Stupid bird. Dinky had a secret weapon, though, one she hadn't brought out yet for fear of the potential repercussions, both to her body and confidence. But after 5 minutes of trying to catch Elizabeth and put her back in her coop where she belonged, Dinky had no choice. Sighing, she turned from the hen, trotted over to the left outside wall of the coop, grabbed a receptacle for her weapon, a sturdy bowl. This she did trust her telekinesis on. Then used the hoof to open the barrel and scoop out her weapon. Chicken feed. Not even the much-lauded Rainbow Dash could have moved with the speed that Elizabeth did up to Dinky at the sight and sound of chicken feed being scooped up and ready for her. Inside the coop, the other chickens in their cages, who had heard the sound, began clucking and squawking as well. They had already been fed, but the chickens were voracious little feathered monsters, always hungry for more feed. Always. Dinky had used to like chickens. Then she worked with them. Walking and using her telekinesis at the same time was hard for the filly, but she managed to accomplish it, moving the bowl of chicken feed into the coop along with her, Elizabeth following and pecking at Dinky's hooves, trying to get her to drop the bowl of feed so the chicken could feast. Later, she would probably think that this was excellent practice for her telekinesis. At the moment, all it made her want to do was give Elizabeth a solid buck to her beak. With effort, Dinky managed to perform her latest trick, holding two things aloft telekinetically at once. In this case, taking some feed from the bowl and putting it into Elizabeth's cage. The chicken eagerly leapt after it, and Dinky closed the cage's door quickly, locking it securely. Elizabeth did not seem to mind as the hen pecked away at her feed, but the remaining chickens were, by now, in an uproar, and probably contemplating launching a coup for the coop in order to get their beaks on the feed. Sighing heavily, Dicky began using her hooves to give feed to every chicken, making sure none got left out, all the while hoping that Miss Fluttershy wouldn't come by to see that she was feeding the chickens again, albeit significantly smaller portions than their normal meals. Once finished with her task, the filly rushed out of the chicken coop and closed the door securely. "Tink! Net!" Dicky proclaimed proudly as he trotted away from the chicken coop. My little pony, ah, my little pony, friendship never meant that much to me, my little pony, but now you're all here and now I can see. Stormy weather, lots to share, a musical bond with loving care, teasing laughter, it's an easy feat, and magic makes it all complete. You have my little ponies. How did I ever make so many true friends? Foam! Custom created by Rainbow Doubledash. You are watching Lunaverse, only on the Hub. I'm sorry I had to do that, people. Dinky Doo wasn't quite sure what introverted meant, but she knew that Miss Fluttershy was a shining example of introvertedness, which was probably a word, barely ever interacting with any other pony due to her being extremely, shy. In fact, Fluttershy really only talked to 3 ponies that Dinky knew of. The first was Rainbow Dash, the town's weather manager, whom Dinky knew was Fluttershy's oldest friend. The second was Dinky's mother, Ditzy Doo, who delivered mail to Fluttershy and would also often run errands into town for the yellow-coated Pegasus. And the third was Dinky herself. That, though, was probably only because even a pony like Fluttershy couldn't possibly be shy around a pony she knew, since the pony was only a few days old. Dicky smiled across the table at Miss Fluttershy, even as she put the 3 silver bits that she had given into her winter coat, telekinetically. "Thank you," Dicky said as she did, though, despite her enthusiasm, she kept her voice down. Miss Fluttershy tended to flinch away from loud-speaking voices, Dicky had learned. "You're welcome," Fluttershy responded sweetly. Most of Fluttershy had said come out sweetly. There wasn't a bad bone in her body. Dicky sometimes wonders maybe that was a problem, though. "No spending it all in one place." Dicky was old enough to know that saying the phrase was more of a tradition than an actual request, so she just nodded and smiled. A thought occurred to her, though, as he did. One oddly hadn't come to her, despite helping Fluttershy out with housekeeping for about a year now. "Miss Fluttershy, can I ask a question?" "Of course, dear," Dicky considered. "It's kind of a personal question." For a moment, Fluttershy looked almost panicked at the thought of having to answer a personal question. But in a surprising show of resolve, the yellow Pegasus steeled herself. "Well, as long as it's not too personal," Dicky shook her head. "I don't think so. I'm just wondering where you get all your bits from. I mean, I don't think you have a job like Mamba or even Miss Trixie." "Oh," Fluttershy responded, looking much relieved at the nature of the question. Apparently she didn't consider it too personal. I'm independently wealthy." Dinky Doo stared. She understood the individual words, but not the phrase. Fluttershy seemed to realize this after a few moments and explained. "My family, the Posies, are invested in the weather protection for Equestria." "Invested?" "Oh, sorry," Fluttershy apologized, putting a hoof to her mouth. We own a part of the weather factory in Cloudsdale." "Really?" Dicky asked eagerly. Not too long ago, they had learned a little bit about weather protection in school. "What part? The rainbow fountain? The lightning coils?" "Oh, no," Fluttershy explained, looking embarrassed. I don't mean an actual part. We're invested in it. It means that any money that the factory makes, my family gets a share of. A large share. A controlling share, actually. Then we put the money we get into the bank, and it collects interest.
That means that the banks gave us money just for having money.
Dickie's jaw dropped at the concept. Suddenly, a phrase he heard once, the rich get richer, made a lot more sense.
But only if they think it's a safe investment.
Fluttershy explained quickly.
We have to keep most of it in the banks. We can only spend so much each year, or else we don't earn interest anymore. And it only does that because it's been there for a long, long time. But, yeah, it's a bit much like back in Cloudsdale. So I live in Ponyville instead, and just let my parents and brother and sister handle everything.
Dickie blinked a few times as he took this in.
Wow,
she intoned.
That's really neat, Miss Fluttershy.
Fluttershy beamed.
Thank you, Dinky Doo, but, why, if you don't mind me asking, Dennis, I mean, why are you so invested in money all of a sudden?
Dickie considered telling Miss Fluttershy about her secrets. Secrets are hard to keep, after all. But Dickie had once heard Miss Trixie said that a secret stops being a secret if more than one pony knows about it. Then again, Miss Fluttershy had been instrumental in Dickie getting to the point that she currently was at. When Dickie's mother had to work on weekends, Miss Fluttershy falsed for Dickie, and Dickie would help Miss Fluttershy around her cottage with all the animals that Miss Fluttershy tended to. Miss Fluttershy had even begun playing her the 3 bits every week, stating that if a pony did work, it needs to be rewarded somehow. A gentle knocking came from the door to Fluttershy's home. Before Dinky could blurt out everything, and, by extension, possibly ruin everything. Fluttershy flinched noticeably, looking like she was about to leap for cover, but managed not to flee as Dinky Doo hopped from where she had been sitting in front of the table and ran over to the nearest window to check outside. Quickly spotted the gray-coated, yellow-maned Pegasus pony, still dressed in her blue mailmare's uniform, despite now being an off-shift, and the sun nearing the horizon to the west.
It's Mama!
The filly exclaimed happily as she raced over to the door and opened it with her hooves. There was no way she could concentrate on telekinesis right now, and quickly bursting through and nuzzling her mother, who returned to nuzzle eagerly. Fact! Ditzy Doo was the best mother in the world. I personally think that's my own mother, but for the sake of this fic, yeah. There were a lot of reasons for this, and a lot of fillies and colts claimed this about their mother, but as far as she was concerned, her mother had actual proof, in the form of being the element of kindness. Not having the element of kindness, actually being the element of kindness. Ditzy Doo had tried to explain it to her daughter, and a lot of it had gone over Dinky's head, but the unicorn filly simply understood that this was altogether a more impressive feat than simply having the element. Eventually, the embrace had to end, and Ditzy Doo pulled away from Dinky and met her eyes. With her right eye, anyway. The other had drifted off, and for that matter, Ditzy Doo had to turn her head a little to get at the right one look at her daughter. Dinky's mom had something the doctors called strabismus pretty badly, which meant her 2 eyes never aligned properly without her mother trying really hard. But Dinky didn't care about that.
Hi, Mama!
Dinky exclaimed.
Hi, Muffin.
Dinky responded with a warm smile.
How was everything today? Great! I helped Miss Fluttershy with her chickens since he tried to help Mr. Fox.
He was an actual fox, right? Ditzy asked, looking past Dinky and Fluttershy, who had gotten up from the table and approached the door, considerably more at ease now, as he knew that the pony who had shown her up at her door was already known to her, and expected regardless.
Yes, the poor thing had broken his tail. I don't know how he managed to do it to himself. Probably trying to get at your chickens,
Dinky theorized. Fluttershy's eyes widened, covering her mouth with her front hoofs.
Oh no, Mr. Fox would never! He promised me ever since he came here once with a bad ear section.
Had any pony else said that, it might have sounded crazy. But both her mother and daughter had learned long ago that Fluttershy could really talk to animals. Indeed, it was her special talent, signified by her cutie mark of a trio of butterflies. Therefore, instead of seeking out the nearest doctor, Ditzy Doo just nodded. Well, she said, leaning down to nuzzle Dinky again,
I'd love to stay and chat, Fluttershy, but I've had a long day. If you don't mind, I think I'll just be going.
Dinky was already getting her winter cap and cape. Pegasus ponies like her mother and Fluttershy tended to have a natural resistance to cold weather, but Dinky was a unicorn pony and wasn't so lucky. Winter and snow were fun, but she was eagerly looking forward to winter wrap-up, which would be arriving only in a few short weeks, especially seeing as there had been an extra snowfall and cold weather schedule over the past few weeks since the longest night festival, and, well, Dinky tried not to think about what had happened too much. But in short, an evil alicorn had escaped from her 1,000 years of imprisonment on the sun and made it really hot, like a summer day, outside in the middle of winter, melting a lot of snow. The weather services across Equestria tried to make up for that with a colder winter than had been planned for some reason that went over Dinky's head. But when Dinky accepted as
very important,
Fluttershy nodded at Ditzy Doo's statement.
Okay, I'll see you tomorrow.
She looked at Dinky.
And I'll see you next week, Dinky Doo. Next week!
Dinky promised with a smile. Dinky and Ditzy turned and left Fluttershy's cottage at that, walking down from the small hill it was perched on. Dinky sticking close to her mother, something that even the little filly realized she had been doing more ever since the longest night festival. Dinky had heard some terms like traumatic experience. Dinky understood that to mean something very scary that still scares you even after it's over. Tossed around in reference to the other thing that the evil alicorn, Corona, had done. Kidnapped Dinky and about 50 other foals, holding them hostage in order to make Ponyville do what she said. That had been scary, but at the end of it, her mother had saved her and every pony else, and became the element of kindness as well. If Corona had showed up again, Dinky was certain that her mother would get Miss Trixie, Miss Carrot Top, and all the other elements of harmony, and make Corona go away like they had last time. Still, no reason to not stick close to her mother, just in case. A chill wind chose that moment to sweep across the fields that lay between Ponyville proper and the Everfree Forest, which Fluttershy's cottage sat near the edge of. Dinky shivered a little at it, and her mother noticed.
Want a ride?
Ditzy asked, kneeling a little so Dinky could get on her back, where it was all warm, and her mother could use her wings to keep the cold winds from Dinky's face. Dinky paused, however. Her mother had just a long shift at the post office, and Dinky knew that this was following a long shift yesterday as well. Her hooves, shoulders, and dock would be sore, and as he was already trudging and trotting. Basically, Ditzy looked tired, and Dinky didn't even want to add to that.
I'm okay,
she said, which wasn't quite a lie. As well as she was still a little cold, she was hardly freezing.
It's just a little cold. I don't want to be a bother.
Ditzy Doo blinked a few times. Dinky, you're never a bother, she said.
But you had a long workday and...
Her mother cut her off with a smile, leaning forward, nuzzling her.
Dinky Doo, one day, not too long from now, you're probably going to get too big for me to carry, and not want me to carry you anyway. I like to get in as much as possible while I can. She smiled at Dinky. It's my birthday in a week. You could call it an early birthday gift. Dinky waited only a moment more before smiling and nodded, climbing onto her mother's back and nuzzling her neck and mane. Happy birthday!
Ditzy Doo stood easily and trotted with noble spring in her step, looking over her shoulder and smiling at Dinky Doo as her wings rested to keep her daughter safe and straight from winter breezes that might come along. Best gift ever, she informed her filly. Okay, people, you might be ready for a lot more moments like this in this fic, so if you are diabetic, I recommend Insulin Shots, and I also recommend that you should go over there right now, because I have a feeling it's not going to get any less cute. Dinky Doo's home was an apartment above the post office. It was small, consisting only of a kitchenette, a room which did double duty as both living room and dining room, 2 bedrooms, and a bathroom. It was, however, fairly modern, with gas lights and gas heating. The latter was somewhat unreliable, though, so occasionally on very cold nights, the living dining room pulled extra duty as Dinky and Ditzy's bedroom, since it also had a more traditional wood fireplace. Tonight, though, the heat seemed to be behaving itself. On coming home, Ditzy Doo had immediately begun preparing dinner, with Dinky helping out as much as possible. Sometimes Ditzy and Dinky had to make fairly small meals. Dinky understood that being a mail mare didn't pay nearly as well as Dinky thought it should have, given that Ditzy Doo helped keep Ponyville in contact with the rest of Equestria. But saving the world from Corona had prompted Princess Luna to grant each of the elements of harmony a sizable reward. Dinky didn't know to how much exactly, but her mother had been rendered speechless at first when Miss Trixie came by to explain it all, and had spent most of the next few days walking on starlight. Tonight, dinner consisted of a big loaf of bread, almost the size of Dinky's head, and a larger assortment of vegetables than Dinky had ever seen in one place. Carrots, celery, zucchini, broccoli, tomato, which was a festival in Dinky's eyes no matter what Miss Terriley told her, 2 kinds of lettuce, along with shredded Parmesan cheese and croutons, all arranged into a massive salad for the two to split. Dinky was less than happy about the zucchini, but, being a foal, she learned numerous techniques to avoid eating it. Mostly. After dinner, Dinky had to go to bed almost immediately, as she had school in the morning. Her mother tucked her into bed and sang a lullaby for her. Dinky pretended to fall asleep, though only slowly so that way her mother would not expect a thing. Once Ditzy Doo had left her bedroom, however, Dinky quietly climbed out of the bed, retrieving 2 of the 3 silver boots from her cloak, and making her way over to her bedroom's closet. Inside her closet was a box, filled with various odds and ends that had caught her eyes as she had grown up. But, more importantly, the box covered a loose floorboard. Pulling up the floorboard revealed, thanks to Dinky's softly glowing horn, a mass of silver and a piece of paper. Specifically, 98 silver bits. A number that grew by 2 as Dinky put her newly earned bits into the pile. It had been hard. So very hard, saving up all this money, rather than spending it on candy and toys like Miss Fluttershy expected her to do. And she did, admittedly, keep 1 of 3 bits she earned for herself every week, which she would spend on whatever she liked. But this was Dinky's secret and surprise. Or at least, it was the secret that she was going to help her get the surprise. Dinky had the best mother in the world, and the best mother in the world deserved the best birthday gift in the world. Last year, all Dinky had been able to get her mother was a hoof-made card. Ditzy Doo had loved it, and Dinky knew that her mother had loved it, but it didn't seem like enough. Unfortunately, any real gift required money, which was in even shorter supply for Dinky than it was for Ditzy, given that she was just a foal who hadn't even earned her cutie mark yet. Then Miss Fluttershy had started paying for her helping at the cottage each week when she looked after her, and Dinky had formed a plan. Save the money. Most of it anyway. But she had to save it secretly, lest her mother realize what she was up to and ruin the surprise. Of course, even Dinky hadn't known quite how to get her mother, but a few weeks ago that had changed when Diamond Tiara, from school, had mentioned offhand to her friend Silver Spoon, and Dinky Doo had overheard, that a brand new jewelry store would be opening up in Ponyville soon, and that her daddy was going to get her anything she wanted from it as soon as it opened. Dinky didn't like Diamond Tiara that much, but right then and there, she considered the Earth Ponyville her best friend. Dinky's mother didn't have any jewelry, though not by choice. She simply couldn't afford it. Jewelry was expensive, but surely, with 100 silver bits, Dinky could go into the jewelry store, find something, and then give her mother the birthday gift she deserved. The unicorn filly picked up the piece of paper in her hooves, torn from a newspaper, and looked it over, double-checking at the store's opening date once again. Nothing had changed. The store would be opening its doors for the first time. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Dinky covered her secret stash once more, and climbed into the back of her bed, thinking thoughts that were nearly as sweet as her mother's lullaby. Tomorrow, she would walk into Amethyst store's finest jewelers, buy something, a necklace, earrings, bangles, or something, and all her hard work would finally pay off.